Hi, friends, and welcome to the second audio episode here on my Substack. If you're a paid subscriber, thank you so much for your support. And if you're not yet, please consider becoming one. It costs just a few dollars a month, and it supports me in doing more of these audio episodes where evidently the theme is covering the most controversial of controversial topics. In my last audio episode, I covered the hot button topic of reproductive sovereignty beyond big pharma and government control, what that means, what it means to have control, or even better yet, partnership with our bodies as women. So go check that episode out if you haven't already. And today we're going to be diving into the plant medicines that actually aren't. Over the last 5 years in particular, but really over the last decade or so, these plant substances like ayahuasca, ibogaine, mushrooms, psilocybin, which is an extract from psychedelic mushrooms, these psychedelic plant substances have gained a lot of popularity. They are really trending. They're becoming more mainstream. They're becoming more discussed in holistic and spiritual circles. They're being touted as really effective options for severe trauma and addiction and mental health problems. They're also presented as kind of a quick fix for spiritual connection. Now, spirituality, it doesn't actually work that way. There's not a magic pill to connect with God or to connect with your soul or to get to a higher level of consciousness. It doesn't work that way, but I can see why the idea seems really appealing because we are longing for a deeper connection to God. We're longing for a broadened understanding of what reality really is. More and more people are waking up to that longing that is within them, to that sense that reality goes far beyond the physical dimension that we can touch, taste, see, hear. So I understand that what you're going to learn in this audio episode is why these plant medicines are not the best route to get there. The only voices I have seen opposing the use of these substances are coming from religious individuals, and particularly what I would define as fundamentalist religious individuals. Now, my definition of religious fundamentalism is when a person trusts religious authorities, they quote, trust the experts more than they trust their own spiritual discernment. To put that another way, these people trust other people more than they trust the Holy Spirit, right? They are going to go to books, to theology, to other people's interpretations, more than they're going to trust sitting with their own heart and soul and hearing God within themselves. How do I know this? I used to be one. And in my book, The Scorpion and the Lion, I discuss my journey to get closer to God while leaving religious rule books. Now, these religious individuals who are talking about some potential problems with these plant medicines, they have some of it right, but they're not aware of the bigger picture. In fact, I have not heard anyone speaking about the bigger picture about what these plant medicines do to the human soul and the human psyche, because most people don't see that. Most people don't recognize that. That's what we're going to be discussing today. I absolutely do not have the complete picture here when it comes to these plant substances, but I do have a bigger picture. And one resource for that is my training with my mentor and my personal medical intuitive, Brenda Pantango. And when I first started my practice specifically as a health intuitive, when I had moved away from being what I called a nutrition coach or a nutritional therapist, and I really stepped into supporting people at a deeper level of healing on the energetic and emotional levels, I was observing more and more the negative, really the energetic scars left from these substances when clients would come to me and they had used these. And I was starting to see it more and more from the people I was interacting with, especially at holistic gatherings where there can be a prevalence of people who have intensely used these substances on their so-called spiritual journey, or really on their spiritual journey. I don't mean to say that dismissively, but I am going to get into why these are not inherently spiritual substances, and they do not facilitate inherently spiritual experiences, although people might interpret it as such. And what I was seeing from these individuals was a loss of their soul. And it disturbed me, and it made me sad. And I was seeing these substances become popular. Like, oh, all the spiritual cool kids on Instagram are using these substances, and it's so cool to go do these ayahuasca trips, and that will heal your childhood trauma. And just do some more ayahuasca, dude. And I was just not hearing any dissident voices to this, which is why I want to add my voice to this conversation and introduce a bigger picture here. Yes, some of the cool kids are doing it, but that doesn't make it wise. It doesn't make it smart. Let's talk about what's really happening on the energetic and the soul level when people use these substances. Let's say somebody has just gotten back from their ayahuasca journey with a Peruvian shaman, and something that they will likely say is, oh my gosh, I had the most incredible spiritual experiences. I saw God, or I was talking to animal totems. I saw Jesus. I saw Buddha. Mother Mary was hanging out with me. Whatever it may be, especially religious or spiritual figures that resonate with them, they have had some kind of experience with that. They've had this technicolor spiritual adventure while they were tripping. And then what often happens is 5 or 6 months later, they have increased depression, or they have a mental health crash, or they start to feel a loss of that connection that they felt while they were using these substances. And they really want to have that sense of connection back. And they think the way to do that is to use the substances again. So they do, and it can create this cycle. A lot of people will say that these substances helped them. Now, we got to dive in to the different layers here. Is that true? Is that not true? Can they trust their experience? It's like when people tell me that antidepressants helped them. Okay, let's unravel that. I'm glad that you felt that you interpreted that antidepressants, for example, helped you. Let's use that example. And the comprehensive medical literature shows that antidepressants are no more effective than placebo. They do not balance brain chemistry. In fact, what they do is imbalance brain chemistry in such a way that we know it increases the likelihood of worse mental health outcomes, more recurrent mental health challenges in the long term compared to people who don't use antidepressants. And we also know that antidepressants can dull emotional experience across the board. So it can feel useful to a person to be distanced from their pain, right? This is why people drink alcohol or use marijuana when they're having emotional pain, because it creates a sense of distance and numbing. But is that healing? Just because that feels useful emotionally and psychologically, is that actually taking them closer to healing? So these are also questions that we can unpack and explore when a person says that these plant psychedelics and, quote, plant medicines were useful to them. was the spiritual experience that they had truly authentic? Are they having negative long-term consequences from using these substances on an energetic level? Are they recognizing the negative consequences that these substances can have in their life? Because if you don't recognize the consequences of these substances and you just credit these substances with helping you, then you're not seeing the full picture. And what I want to mention here is that this can all be reversed. It can all be healed. We can repair our energy field. We can repair the loss of soul pieces, which I'm going to discuss and which is very real. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. But this is part of the conversation that we have to have around these substances. One of my mentors and my own personal medical intuitive is Brenda Pantango. She has helped me understand the complexities and the nuance and what's really happening on an energetic and soul level with these substances. Because like I said, I was seeing this from my clients, I was seeing this from people around me, especially in these holistic circles. And I went to her and I was like, hey, this is what I'm observing energetically from people who are using these substances. I said, especially when I see people who have used a lot of ayahuasca, their soul leaves their body. And it's really disturbing to me. I feel like this has some really, really negative consequences and what can be done. And so I was having conversations with Brenda, and she has really gone into the weeds, and she is a very, very, very high level intuitive who helped me understand the dynamics that are happening here. And so what I'm about to explain from an energetic and emotional standpoint, this is what I've learned from Brenda, that putting some words to what I was observing but didn't have the words for. So Brenda says when people take any amount of these substances, I don't care if you're microdosing mushrooms or you're taking a hit of ayahuasca and tripping out, it is like taking a cannonball blast to your energy field. Now, I am going to use some terms like energy field, astral realm, soul pieces. I'm going to define them, but some people might hear me say those words and immediately have a gut reaction like, oh my gosh, Lauren sounds wackadoodle crazy. What has she been drinking? I mean, she's talking about these plant medicines, but what is she on to be using those words? Some people might have turned this recording off already because if they come from a fundamentalist strain, they're taught to put everything, quote, new age under an umbrella, and rather than using spiritual discernment to sort truth from fiction, they're taught that it's all demonic and dangerous and just stay away from it. So they might have already turned off this recording just because I've said some of those words. But I ask you to trust your own discernment, be willing to learn. I'm going to be using terms that are like energetic biology terms. So words like intestine and brain to describe your physical biology. Well, there are some terms to describe your energetic biology, and this is really important to know, just to have an understanding of who you are and how your body works. And unfortunately, we're not taught these terms. We're not taught this reality certainly not in medical school, of course, but even just in our daily culture. Okay, so that's my introduction to some of these words I'm going to be using in this conversation. Like I said, when you take any of these psychedelic plant medicines, it is taking a cannonball and exploding it around your very delicate energy system that surrounds your body. We call this the subtle energy body. Subtle, not because it is not important, but subtle because we don't see it with the naked eye. We don't sense it with our five senses, although we can absolutely sense it with our sixth sense. And you probably have had this experience many times where you go into a room and you can feel the tension between the people who are already there, or you walk past a person and you can just feel the love emanating from them. You can feel how open their heart is. Well, that is the energy field around them. Now, there are complexities to this. There are layers to that energy field. The emotional energy layer, the mental energy layer, the etheric energy layer, the aura, the chakras have their own energy systems. So it is complex. This is a complex energy biology. And we're just going to be simplifying it for this discussion. Another part of our energetic biology is a grounding cord. This is an energy cord that ties us to Earth's energy frequency. So it provides that sense of grounding, of rooting us to Earth. The human body is a spiritual instrument. This is where our soul comes into, that our soul animates and creates in order to have physical experiences, to learn spiritual lessons on planet Earth. And part of the way we do that is connecting to Earth, being grounded to Earth. That grounding cord is very important to feel balanced. And these psychedelics, they can fray that grounding cord. They can even break that grounding cord. And so people can start to feel really imbalanced. They can't metaphorically find their feet under them, okay? Because that deep fundamental connection, like that umbilical cord to Mother Earth, has been really compromised. Like I said, this can be corrected, but it does take some knowledge. Like it requires a skilled surgeon, right, to work with the physical biology, and in a similar way, it can take a skilled energy worker, somebody who knows this energetic biology, to repair the energy system. And then we get into the impacts on the soul. And this is what was really disturbing to me when I was seeing people who had done multiple sessions with ayahuasca, people who had done other drugs like MDMA or ketamine, or some of these things that are being mainstreamed as tools for trauma recovery and mental health and addiction recovery. But what I was seeing energetically was these people were losing much of their soul and sometimes becoming soulless. So let's get into what that means from the perspective of our energy biology system. The soul is composed of many pieces. Now, this is a common theme we see in ancient wisdom. There was a recognition behind the shamans. Every culture had a different word for that person, kind of the energy healer, the person who worked at the soul level to bring physical healing to that person. And in all these different cultures, they had the concept that the soul was made up of many pieces, and soul pieces could be lost. They could leave the body through different means. Trauma is a big one. When a person, especially as a child, experiences a lot of trauma, they can lose a lot of their soul. Again, this can be healed, this can be repaired, but this might explain some observations you've had or experiences you've had of trauma, and it feels like you lose a part of yourself. You do, from this energetic soul level. When it comes to psychedelic plant substances, any use, any degree, causes some loss of soul pieces. Even if the person is having what they interpret as this exciting, out-of-body spiritual adventure, while they're tripping, there is on a deeper level a compromise that's happening to their soul. Now, if they're using a lot of these substances, or if they're using these substances on top of past trauma or events that has already compromised the number of soul pieces they have, it can be a recipe for really disaster, quite frankly. And this is why I would look into the eyes of some people who had just done one too many ayahuasca trips. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're not home. The soul has left the building. When the soul is damaged, it compromises our ability to remember who we truly are and why we are here on earth. We all have a destiny, an energetic template. Religious people might call it God's calling for our life, God's plan for our life. But whatever you want to call it, it is like the energy destiny template of the acorn is to become an oak tree. And we all have that. But with soul damage comes disconnection to that template. So we start to feel confused about our path. And instead of turning inward and having this sense of knowing and feeling connected to the still small voice that tells us our next steps, we can't find that inside of us. And so we start to turn to other people or other sources to tell us how to live our life and what our purpose is. And it can create feelings of lostness. The solution here is to reconnect with that divine plan for our life. That is our birthright, to be able to connect to that, to know it, to feel it, to have it come to us in dreams. But we have to have our soul intact. We have to have enough soul pieces in order to be connected to that template. And now let's talk about the astral realm and when people are tripping and they're having these dramatic experiences or visions or seeing and hearing things that are beyond the physical world. What's really happening there? Drugs like LSD and MDMA, psychedelics, and these plant medicines, they all have one thing in common, which is they take people to the astral realm. Now, when I talk about realms, or I should say realms or dimensions, you can think of it like tuning into different radio frequencies. Now, this is not a perfect example, but it is simplified. So we have all these different radio frequencies like running through the air at all times. They're all available to us. It just matters what we're tuning into, and that will be the energetic information we receive through the radio. So it's quite similar with the human brain. We can tune into different energy frequencies, and the brain is kind of the radio that decodes that energetic information. When people are taking these plant substances, they're tuning into an energetic frequency, a dimension called the astral realm. Now, there are many, many, many realms available to us. The important thing to understand here is planet Earth is a realm. It's a spectrum of energy that we tune into, we exist in through settings in our brain. Again, this is not a perfect analogy, but bear with me. And on the dimension of Earth, it allows demonic entities, it allows angelic entities to exist in this spectrum of energy. Okay? This is why we have spiritual warfare on planet Earth, because it can host all these different energies. This is not true in higher planes of existence. The lower frequencies where we have evil and deception, those can't exist. They literally cannot exist at higher realms. So those are the realms where it's just angels, it's just wisdom. It's getting us closer and closer and closer to an experience of pure God, of pure love. But that's not the astral realm. The astral realm is quite like planet Earth in that both negative entities and angelic entities can exist. It can host both. So when people are tripping out on these drugs and plant medicines, and let's say they have a vision of the Buddha, is that really the Buddha coming to them? Because this realm hosts demons. It hosts a lot of tricksters. And so people think that they're getting this huge, exciting spiritual adventure, and they take all of their visions at face value, and they take everything that spiritual beings are telling them at face value. Well, that's not smart. That's not smart. Where is your discernment? You're having this out-of-body experience, and you're just believing all of these things from this realm, which can host really dark entities and dark energy and deception. Is that trustworthy information you're getting? I don't know. I wouldn't trust it. The only trustworthy spiritual information comes when you can connect to the higher realms of consciousness. We are going to discuss how to get there, but it's not as glamorous or popular or Instagram friendly as your ayahuasca trips. It's not. It's more like chop wood, carry water kind of thing, or like really major, humbling, ego, painful events that can get you there. It's not the glamour. It's not the quote spiritual magic pills that are going to get you to those higher planes of existence where there is trustworthy spiritual guidance because it only hosts higher frequencies. Here are some other ways to understand the astral realm that can help you ground into this idea. When people do seances, most of the time they're just tapping into the astral realm. And so they might have an experience of connecting to somebody, some being who says, "Oh, I'm your dead Grandma Sally. I'm Napoleon," right? Okay, so the person who is hosting that is hosting something. They are hosting something that is telling them they are Napoleon or somebody's Grandma Sally. But is that really true? Is that really trustworthy? What if it is a demon in disguise who's just lying to you? And that is where the fundamentalist religious folks actually have got it right. Now, they don't understand the bigger picture here. They tend to be very black and white and just write off anything that doesn't fit in their rule book as demonic, which is not true. We really have to understand the bigger picture. But this is how it works when people are just tapping into the spiritual realm. They can be channeling something, and they might actually be saying truthfully what they're channeling, but the thing they channeled is not being truthful to them, right? You get what I'm saying? So here's another example. The medical medium. Oh, he was so popular and everybody was like, oh, he's a real channeler. He's channeling something. But you know what level he channels from? The astral realm. Can you trust anything there? No. Can you trust what he's saying? No. It is interesting that people who channel from the astral realm, they can often get quite a lot of popularity, quite a lot of followers, because they are egoic people, right? The ego is involved because this is not a state of higher consciousness. So there's going to be a lot of ego involved with these so-called spiritual experiences. So just watch for that, because that is a tell of whether a person is actually accessing information from higher states of reality, or if they're just playing around in the astral realm. And there is a lot of demonic activity there. There is a lot of entities who want airtime on planet Earth, who want attention, who want to glom on to any human being who's like, oh, hey, I want a spiritual experience. Let's see what happens, right? This happens with Ouija boards all the time. Yeah, great way to catch some demons there. But you see what's happening when I describe the astral realm, how it hosts negative entities and higher frequencies, just like planet Earth. And for spiritual development, we actually have to be able to tune into higher levels, higher dimensions that can only host frequencies of love and truth. Now let's talk about how to do the energetic repair if you have used any kind of psychedelics in the past. And let's also talk about how to have consciousness raising experiences where you're tapping into these higher spiritual dimensions without the risks to your energy field that come with psychedelics. If you have used any amount of psychedelics in your past, if you have microdosed mushrooms, or if you have done multiple ayahuasca trips or any combination of these substances that I have discussed, my first recommendation, in fact, my primary recommendation here, is to book yourself a session with Brenda Pantango. What has to happen on an energetic level is some really deep repair of the layers of your etheric and energy body, repair of the grounding cord, repair of, or rather, reintegration of soul pieces that have been lost. And the beautiful thing of this work that Brenda does is if you have lost soul pieces from past trauma, that's all going to be repaired and reintegrated through this work. So it can actually be a blessing in disguise. If you have used these substances thinking that they were going to be beneficial, well, they always have consequences. They always have negative consequences on your energy body. I don't care if somebody is saying that they only had a positive experience. That could be how psychologically they're interpreting their experience, but they aren't aware of what's happening on an energetic and a soul level when they've used these substances. And so the blessing in disguise is that if you do this work with Brenda to reintegrate those shattered soul pieces, those lost soul pieces, you're going to be even more whole than when you first started to use these psychedelics, because the truth is, most of us have had traumatic experiences in our life that has caused quite severe energetic and soul damage. So that can be a really beautiful piece of your healing journey. Now, I have not used any psychedelics in my life. I never will. But one thing I did use growing up, well, use quotations, it was used on me, was anesthesia. I have shared my story about being in the medical system for years when I was growing up due to very severe autoimmune disease. So I had multiple medical tests that required anesthesia. And that is quite similar in its impacts to these psychedelics, is that it has a lot of energetic damage that's associated with it. So if you have used any anesthesia in your past as well, doing this work with Brenda is going to be really important to balancing, healing your energy system, and being able to have that full contact and connection with your soul template. Like I discussed, that is the energetic field that is around the acorn that guides it to become an oak tree. And we all have that unique energetic field. But if we lose our soul, if we lose too many pieces of our soul, if our energy field becomes too fragmented, we lose touch with that template. We lose touch with a deeper connection and purpose. And that can create a really, really imbalanced feeling. Some people might be hearing this and they might think, oh, okay, I have some damage to my energetic biology. That's no problem. I'll just pray it away. I'll just do some visualizations and fix it up just like that. I don't need a professional help here. And okay, what that is very similar to saying, if you broke your leg, for example, and you look down at your broken leg and say, not a problem, I can just pray it away. Or I can just do some visualizations and I'll be all fixed up tomorrow. Now, in a world of infinite possibilities, and as humans who have the spiritual potential to work miracles like that, that is a possibility. Is it the reality for most humans to fix their biology that quickly? Not really. That takes a very, very, very high state of consciousness, and you know you're not there if you are struggling with any kind of health issue, financial issue, relationship issue. So it's like if you believe that there exists the power to heal anything, if you believe that God exists, sometimes the way that healing force works is to guide you to the tools and resources that facilitate that healing, because your consciousness alone is not yet at a place where it can do that. Like I said, I do believe that is the birthright, the potential of human beings to work miracles, just like Jesus showed that it was possible. And he told us that all this you will do and more, greater works you will do. Okay, so we know that is our potential. Is it practical immediately? Maybe not. Maybe it is useful if you break your bone to go to a bone setter and a surgeon. And that's what happens when I refer people out to Brenda. She is the most skilled energetic surgeon. So she will repair that broken energetic biology, just like if you go to a bone setter, if you break your leg, they're going to help you repair that broken physical biology. I have seen the transformative impacts of Brenda's psychic surgery, in a way, her energetic healing work, in my own life, with my friends, with my clients. Her work is truly profound. I'm going to put a link to the interview I did with her here on my Substack, and a link to her website as well, where you can book a session with her and get started to repair your energetic biology, rebalance yourself, reintegrate with your soul template, and you're going to feel it. It's like that sense of purpose, grounding, clarity, that connection to your intuition. Oftentimes, all the things people are trying to get out of doing these psychedelics that then backfires, you're going to experience that with the energetic repair that Brenda can facilitate for you. Now let's talk about avenues to have these experiences of deeper reality, trauma healing, heightened states of consciousness, experiencing these higher dimensions of reality without the negative consequences that inevitably come with any use of psychedelic, any degree of use. Like I said, this is not as glamorous an approach as the cool kids going to Burning Man and getting high out of their mind and talking about their ayahuasca trips on Instagram and blah, blah, blah. It's not that glamorous. It's not going to look that good on social media, but this is the more effective path here. The first thing I recommend, and a technique that was one of the biggest needle movers on my own intuitive journey, is intuitive journaling. Now, I have experimented and developed a very unique process for this intuitive journaling that helps you quickly bypass your conscious mind and start accessing your intuition as you're writing. And you're going to have a really profound experience. It is a practice, so this is a skill you're going to develop over time. At first, it might feel a little rough because it's like if you're learning how to speak a new language, it doesn't happen instantly. It happens with some practice. But this is a technique that I use with all my clients. I have a 30-day process that uses this very specific technique, a very specific sequence of prompts to allow you to tap into your intuition, rewire your subconscious, and move past limiting beliefs to really expand your consciousness in a safe and effective way. And you can start that at beyondtherulebook.com. That's where you'll find this 30-day workbook that I've created. There are other avenues that create the heightened states we can find from psychedelics and without any of the negative effects. One of those avenues is breath work. It can actually release DMT naturally in the brain and create an experience of that palpable connection to a deeper reality, to a reality beyond this 3D world, which is what so many people are longing, because they know deep down that this reality we can touch, taste, see, and feel is not it. There's something more. Another avenue for a heightened state of consciousness, or to get even to a higher frequency, is ecstatic dance. To just fully move the body. Maybe you can find ecstatic dance groups in your area. You can just do it in your own living room by putting on music. You can look for special frequency music, for example, for 32 hertz, which is shown to have positive cellular effects, or just put on your favorite dance music and just really let the trapped emotions go from your body physically. That is something you can do through dancing. Let trapped trauma go physically. Make a practice out of this, and you will find that it changes your emotional state pretty instantly. It can change your mental state pretty instantly. Sex and orgasmic experiences can absolutely elevate your consciousness to a higher state and even bring you into those higher dimensions, what we call soul dimensions, where you're beyond the astral realm, and it is those higher frequencies of love and purity and truth. This is where the concept of sacred sex comes from. People can use Tantra and the systems of sacred sexuality to have a shortcut into those heightened states through sex. Needless to say, these heightened consciousness experiences and these heart-opening experiences are vastly more likely to happen when you are with somebody who also has an open heart, who's meeting you with vulnerability. When you are in that place too, it takes that level of intention and self-awareness. But then when you have two people who are meeting with that same intention, it can have a synergistic effect where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and you can reach these heightened spiritual dimensions together in a way that is more effective, deeper than you might reach by yourself. My last recommendation for expanding your consciousness to reach higher dimensions of love and purity in your daily life and heightening your intuition is to use flower essences. Now, I'm going to describe what these are because some people call it plant medicine, but it is a different thing entirely from these psychedelic substances. Flower essences are more like homeopathy in that the energetic imprint in water is the active ingredient, so to speak. It's not an extract for a plant. We're not talking about tinctures where alcohol has extracted certain plant constituents that are then delivered to the body. No, what we're talking about is just introducing subtle energy, that unseen and gentle energy, to the human body, and in such a way that it can be very balancing to our emotional system. It can help release trapped emotions. It can help release and shift trauma in a very gentle way. It can help release addiction in a very gentle way, right? Without any of these negative energy implications. So this is the thing with using psychedelics for cases of addiction and PTSD. The soul is already damaged. The energy field is already damaged from the addiction. And oftentimes very energy sensitive people are struggling with addictive patterns. So why introduce a substance that is going to cause even more etheric and energetic damage to their being? It's not wise, especially when there are so many other tools that can be used that can actually repair the energy system instead of do further damage to it. And flower essences are one of those. Flower essences are made by taking some high quality spring water, putting it in a bowl, glass bowl. You put that bowl under sunlight outside, preferably on grass in the noonday sun, and you pick some fresh flowers and you put that in the water, and then you let it infuse for a couple hours under the sunshine. Now, like I said, we're not extracting chemical components from the flower itself in that short amount of time. What we're doing is allowing the water to be imprinted with the energetic field of the flower. This is a very ancient practice. We see this cross-culturally in so many indigenous cultures as a means of healing. Early cultures would go out and they would lick the dew off flowers in the morning because that water had been imprinted with the healing energy of the flower. And every plant has a different energy field that can facilitate different emotional shifts, different emotional releases in the body, and even expansion of consciousness in different ways. Flower essences are so gentle. They harmonize with the energy field in such a beautiful way. Flower essences have such a close place to my heart. This really is one of my soul modalities, one could say. I did come into Earth with a lot of memory and knowledge around this form of healing. And I used to make custom flower essence blends for my clients based on the different emotional balancing they needed or trauma release. And I loved that. And I had a flower essence line for a little while. I loved that as well. It was a really big piece of my heart. What I will say is having a product business is a lot. It was a lot of moving parts, and I was in this place of transition in my life where I had to let the product side of my business go. So I am no longer making and selling these essences for you all, but I can point you to some really great resources where you can find these essences, or you can experiment with making them yourself because your intuition knows what energy is going to support your healing. So I highly recommend you look up some simple tutorials on how to make flower essences. You can easily find this information and experiment with infusing these flowers in water. I mean, this is the season, blooms are coming out. Just trust what you feel compelled towards from different flowers that are blooming. And if you don't want to make this yourself, there are a lot of different flower essence lines available. Bach Flower Remedies is a very common one. Flower Essence Society, I highly recommend Flower Essence Society. They have a huge line, and I will say my top recommendation right now are the flower essences from Spirit Water Gardens. That's spiritwatergardens.com. The unique aspect of these essences are they are made without alcohol. So the energy is even better preserved from the flowers because alcohol can kind of have a harsh effect that can somewhat dull that really subtle, precious energy from the flowers. These flower essences are made from a very, very open-hearted, lovely, intuitive woman, and she crafts these beautiful blends that target different emotional issues. So you can go check that out on her website and just see what resonates with you. Trust your intuition. Your energy body might lead you to one of these flower remedies that can bring a lot of balance. And that's all I've got for you today. I hope that this gave you some insight, a bigger picture, and positive action steps to take. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.